This episode is brought to you by Bound Hat Company. Discover Bound Hat Company, where high-quality hats meet a greater purpose. Each hat is designed not only for style, but also to give back, with proceeds supporting charities like the PTSD Foundation of America. Whether for the outdoors or everyday wear, Bound Hat Company has the perfect hat for any occasion. Shop now at www.boundhatco.com and join the movement to support veterans and meaningful causes. Bound Hat Co. Style that makes a difference.
The following podcast discusses sensitive topics. Listener discretion is advised. If you or someone you know is struggling, call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline for 24/7 confidential support.
Welcome to Survival in the Trenches, Life Beyond Loss, a podcast where we share the powerful stories of those who have faced extraordinary loss and found the strength to push forward and triumph. These are real journeys of resilience, courage, and hope. Join us as we uncover what it means to rise above, even in the darkest of times. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Survival in the Trenches. My name is Kelly Chandler. I will be your host. Today, we are honored to sit down with Melissa Wandall to talk about her life beyond loss. Thank you so much, Melissa, for being with us here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Wonderful. And I got to know you, quite honestly, by seeing you on LinkedIn and how active you are in the advocacy space. And before we get into why you are there and what you're doing today and on a daily basis, I'd like to take our listeners back in time to learn more about you as a young person and why we're sitting here today.
Absolutely.
What were some of your aspirations when you were younger, when you were growing up?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's so, you go way back and think about that time when you were young and, life was so innocent and free and wonderful. And the biggest thing that I grew up in upstate New York, in a farming community. Now everybody thinks it's so fancy to co-op with people, but that's how we lived. We lived on over 25 acres and we had gardens and trees and every fruit imaginable and every vegetable imaginable. And we co-opted with the farmers around our community and just grew up as a really tight-knit family. My mom and dad, I had a sister that was just exactly 2 years older than me and a brother that was 5 years younger than me. And our time was just spent outside playing all the time. We were huge softball players. My sister and I, and my mom and dad were coaches for each one of our teams. And my sister and I were playing softball one day, and my sister slid into home plate. She was 10 years old, and she hurt what we thought at the time was her knee. And she really was struggling with it a little bit. So my parents took her in to get an MRI on her knee, and they actually found out that she had bone cancer. At 10 years old, which was just really unheard of at that time. You really didn't hear about kids, getting cancer at that time. And so things changed in our 5-person family really, really quick. I remember when my sister got the news. I remember when my mom heard the news. I remember my mom just walking around our house in circles. And I was thinking, Lord, what is wrong with my mom? Why is she walking this fast circles around my house? And I just remember my house becoming a different space. And that's when we just became a family of my sister who had to start getting treatments, had to start going 2 hours away from our home, had to really, truly just the dynamics of our family changed. My grandmother was always a huge part of our life, became even bigger because my sister would have to go have treatments. My mom or dad would, of course, need to go. School became different for us. Sometimes we were there, sometimes we were not. So much happened in these 5 years of my sister. But I looked at my sister. My sister was a jokester. She loved life. I mean, she really lived it. I was the middle child, and my sister and my brother were really, really connected on a really incredible manner. And I just looked at my sister, and she like really took on cancer. Like it really, she let people know how well she was, even though she was so sick inside. And she took it with such a zest of life. Like she taught me strength. She taught me that in your hardest moments of your life, that you can find joy, that you can be a jokester, but you can still be able to take that pain and what you're going through, and you can get through it. And 5 years of my sister being poked and prodded, cancer growing throughout her body. She never complained. I mean, she really didn't. She never complained. Her concern was always about the rest of the family and how they were handling it. And unfortunately, on March 29th of 1980, my sister passed away from cancer. And she was it was just it she I remember when she died, I promised her and God that I would never let anything in my life take me down, that I would move through life with grace when I could, and with faith and with hope, and with the ability to try to do the best that I can every day, to not let life get to me after what I saw my sister experience in her young life. So at that point in my life, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I was going to take life on in some way, and I was never going to let anybody take me down. And after my sister died, my brother and I got thrown back into school. There were no programs. There was no grief counseling. My parents were incredible. They took us in and had a meeting with my brother and I and said, all of our mattresses are in the middle of the living room, and this is where we will all sleep until you feel comfortable going back into your own bedrooms and sleeping on your own. I mean, they did everything right in their own like horrific grief. You know, as a parent who just lost their daughter, they took care of their other young children, which was incredible. I went into school, my first day back of school after about 6 weeks, and I was in sixth grade at the time, and a teacher called me to the front of the room, and I hadn't cried. I was so upset about my sister's death, but I couldn't cry. There was just this piece of me that didn't feel like it was a part of something that I could do. It just wasn't. And so I got into this room. I go step up to the front. The teacher asked me if I would please, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. We can take a minute and
Okay, I can.
if you
Yeah.
need to attend to the dog at any
Yeah,
time,
nope, I'm gonna
feel
get
free.
through it. It was my dog that I worried about because my dog was barking.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what I meant.
okay,
Like if you need to
okay,
step away with the dog,
okay.
I
I'm
totally
so sorry
understand.
that that happened.
That's fine. Life
Okay,
happens.
thank you. So I go,
Yeah.
this teacher calls me up to the front of the room. It's a social studies teacher. And nowadays, our kindergartners know where all the states are on the map. But way back in 1980, in sixth grade, we were just learning. And so I'd missed so much school. But the teacher asked me in front of all my peers after I'd been out grieving after my sister died to showcase where Idaho was on the map. And I couldn't tell him. I had no idea where it was. You know, pick California, pick New York, pick Florida, but Idaho, I had no idea. And he shamed me in front of my class and said, in front of my classmates, and said, just because your sister died does not give you the permission to not know where Idaho is on the map. You will stay after school every day until you can know where all these states are on this map. And I headed back and I was to my seat, and I was so embarrassed that I started crying. And I sit down, and my friend next to me, whose sister was friends with my sister, said, "I'm so sorry. You're crying because your sister took pills and ended her life," which of course was not true. And I just cried and I cried and I was sobbing. Nobody was there. Nobody said anything. The teacher didn't even send me out. Nothing. I just sobbed. But even though those parents that pulled those beds out for me and my brother and said, "We're always here for you," there was no way I was going to go back home and tell them what had just happened to me after my sister had just died and all the pain they went through. I wanted to keep them from the pain. So my life and my grief became about watching out for others and making sure that other people were cared for in their grief, and that they knew that they were loved, and not just in their grief, but any circumstances. And I did that as a sixth grader. I started taking care of people and taking people in and making sure that everybody else was cared for, not really thinking so much about myself. So my forward momentum was my sister and her battling cancer and seeing how incredibly beautiful she took it, and what she did with that in such a beautiful way. And it taught me such strength and grace, and resilience, and a really deep faith that helped me and would help me as I moved into my adult life.
It's incredible. First of all, I'm sincerely sorry for the loss of your sister and everything you had to go through at such a young age. That's hard just in and of itself, not to mention all the other things you were dealing with in the way that others handled it around you. That I can't even imagine going through that and the lack of respect and grace that was shown toward you by that teacher. It's so sad. And you had to internalize that because you didn't want to impact your parents further because they were already going through so much. I mean, that takes a lot for someone to, at that age, take all that information in and not be able to express that. And you turned it into something positive, which on top of everything else, to me, is phenomenal. You made it like your life's goal to help others feel comfortable, or they weren't going through that. To me, that speaks volumes of you. And maybe you took that from your sister and you learned from her. I mean, that's just an amazing story in and of itself.
Yes, thank you so much. It's those promises that you say that you keep, even as a little girl, those pinky promises with your sister that you'll always be there and you'll always take care of one another. It's that same promise, me as as a 12-year-old, I just made that promise and I was going to hold true to it and hold my head high, because even with that teacher embarrassing me in front of everybody, it still wasn't as bad as watching her endure her treatments and still having a smile on her face. How can somebody do that? That's pretty, that's remarkable, and it's beautiful. And I got to witness that, and that was the strength of that older sister that really pulled me in and has really served me well throughout my entire life. So sometimes we don't know why people go through what they go through. We'd have no idea. I don't know why my sister had to die, but I don't ask why. But in her death, she brought so much life and beauty along the way that I hope she knows, who she is and what she has brought into this life, because she's right here with me every day.
That's phenomenal. And I have to say, it's so interesting because we are friends with a family whose daughter is going through cancer treatment. She's 9. She just turned 9. And it's a very rare form of cancer that only a couple hundred people get. And they just received very bad news. And it's incredible to see everything they've been through and gone through and how the community's come around to supporting them. And they continue to be positive. They continue to put it in, a higher power's hands. And you have to wonder, why did they have to go through that? And I know and can only imagine what they're thinking about the boys that surround this little girl. she has two brothers. And so to me, this is a very timely conversation, knowing what you went through at a similar stage and age with siblings,
Yes.
and that how we as a community not only need to think of the parents losing the child, but the siblings as well. I think that's extremely important. And I'm happy that we're coming together to talk about that, because I think they're going to need these resources
Yes.
when this eventually does come
I
to
agree.
fruition, unfortunately.
I agree
Yeah.
so much, but I also agree that people can do things now for those boys. People can take those
Yeah.
boys. I remember I had a teacher, and she would take me on the weekends with permission from my parents. She would come pick me up and just take me places. She'd take me to festivals. She would take me to this. We had this old-fashioned candy store that she would take me to. Just to make sure that I was okay as well, and that in because what happens when you are, my parents were trying to do everything they could to save my sister and do everything they could to manage their family. But then once the community comes around, they have to see those siblings too. And if they can be there for those siblings to give them some sort of normalcy, because the child that unfortunately is ill does get the attention because you need to pour everything into them. And sometimes unintentionally, the siblings get left behind in the middle of it. So it's always good for community members to step in, just take them out for an ice cream, let them know they're loved,
Yeah.
let them know that they know what everything they're going through, that it's okay to have feelings about everything that they're going through as well.
Absolutely. I think that, just like you said, all of their time, energy, and focus is on saving that child that's in jeopardy. Because naturally, that's where your brain, your mind, your energy is going to go. You will do everything in your power to keep that child comfortable, alive, and well. And it has to be so hard as a parent to try and manage that on top of managing raising your other children or child that are in the home. I can't imagine the pressure that comes with that. And so, what a blessing that you had a teacher take you out. Like, that's incredible. And it gives me hope and encouragement, actually, to even have our son reach out to these other boys and just be like, hey, how are you? What's up? Just very simple conversation, to know that everyone's thinking of them, because I think it's going to be very critical going forward.
Yeah, especially with the peers, because the peers, if you have a peer that can step up, that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Because we live in a society now where it's better just not to mention anything, or not, it's better, let's not say anything, let's not mention it, let's act like nothing ever happened. But that's really not what we should do as a community. We should know that it's okay to make eye contact, and it's okay to have those tough conversations, because at the end of the day, they need to know that, it's good, number one, for those boys that are going through this with their sister, but it's also good for their friends as well, to learn that it's okay to communicate. It's okay to point out that they see that they are going through something, and they just want them to know that they care.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why, we even exist as a company, because this storytelling is so powerful, and it's so important to get those feelings out and heard. And these stories matter. In interviewing other people, I'll give them a hug. And in this day and age, it's like, whoa, can I do that? I mean, it's so hard to navigate people having emotional challenges, because you just don't know how to interact and what's appropriate anymore. So I like that you suggest it's okay to have that eye contact and ask some questions. And I think people will, if they aren't comfortable answering a question, they'll just let you know. But at least you asked. I think that speaks volume.
Yes, vulnerability is beautiful. It really is. And it's not just the one that's going through something for them to be vulnerable, but for somebody such as like your son to go up to this other friend and say, hey, how are you? Are you doing okay? Is there anything that I can do for
Right.
you? You know what I'm saying? That being vulnerable is a really great thing. And I think the more that we are vulnerable, and the more we teach our children, and other people's children, that it's okay to be vulnerable, the more we're going to be able to bring that power of community and connection together. Because beautiful things happen when you do that.
I agree. It's that openness, that empathy,
Hmm.
being able to
Yeah,
listen and take information in and do something more positive with it,
right.
that's going to carry us forward in a good way. So, well, moving along into your life and how you were able to move forward after that point in time. How were things for you at that moment when you started moving through and past when your sister actually did pass away?
So yeah, so I started just going into school as I was growing up, trying to figure out who I was. My family was, as we were moving through this grief, it was not easy. It was not easy on my parents. It was not easy on our community. It was not easy being in school. Like I said, I became a caregiver. I just became, and not in my own home. I became a caregiver with my friends or with people that I was meet. I was the person in high school that, okay, go to Missy was my name then. I'm Melissa, but I was always called Missy. Go to Missy, she'll make you feel better, right? I'm the one that in college would sit on that bar stool with a person that had to tell me all their woes. And I had to sit there and listen. My friends are like, you don't have to. I'm like, yeah, I do, because I probably don't have anybody else. So I really, moving through my life, I came to a point where I was always taking care of everybody else and their needs because I wanted people to be heard. I wanted to help people for what they were going to. I wanted to be that optimist to bring that authentic optimism into people's lives. Knowing and letting people know, you can go through the worst of the worst, but at the end of the day, everything will be okay. But we have to see, we have to feel, first we have to be able to take what has
Mhm.
happened in our lives and embrace it and nurture it and honor it to be able to move through it in order to move on and help other people. So, and now as an adult, it has really served me well. Even though some people will say, well, why did you have to sit there that long and talk to that person, or if that person needed you were always available. I think it taught me a lot, and it helped me now as an adult to go through some of the things. Sometimes you think you're through experiencing life in certain manners, but you're really not. That those experiences are setting you up for other experiences. And I am a very faithful person. I really do believe in God, and I have to every day, sometimes get on my knees in order to get through the day. But my drive to be able to help other people through what I experienced became bigger than I ever imagined it would become. I thought I would just live a quiet life, quite honestly.
I love that you said that you feel like it prepares you. Some of these things in your life prepare you
Mhm.
for other events because life throws you curveballs constantly. Some small or easy and others that are insurmountable, at least they seem to be. And I feel like because you went through that at such a young age, it truly was life changing. It sounds like you have an empathetic bone in your body that's never going away. It's something that you feel is a gift. It truly is a gift to sit down and listen to someone who might not have another person to vent to or cry to or whatever. I mean that's a lifeline for people who aren't comfortable doing that in other circumstances. And the fact that you take the time to do that, that's amazing. And I feel like that is something that comes in many times from a tragic event because it almost like forces you and grounds you back to, what is my
Hmm.
purpose? Why am I here? What can I do to help others? And I definitely feel like you had that experience at a young age to help others because you went through pain on your own as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we really truly, I remember I said to my dad a little bit later on in my young adult life, I said, I don't know what my purpose is, Dad. I'm like, I wish I knew what my purpose was. And he goes, well, maybe someday it's just, I know you want to have kids and maybe that's going to be your purpose and you're going to feel it. He goes, but you're going to know your purpose when you experience something in life And he's like, it will just, he goes, your heart will burst and you will know what your purpose is. He goes, because you'll want to keep doing it no matter the cost. And that really has served me well in my life as well, because I do 100% believe that we all go through things in life. Everybody goes through something. It may not be as devastating as watching somebody die or be able to like have grief in your life, but there's all kinds of grief. There's loss of job, there's separation, there's anxiety, crippling anxiety, there's our veterans today. I mean, we could go on and on and on. Everybody has an experience in life that has shaped them. Some people just can't get up and let it help mold them, and others, some of them, it just takes them down and eats them up, and they can't get out of that. For me, I had to utilize it. I had to let it, even though honestly, like I can speak in front of 10,000 people and I have no problem with that. You put me in a room where I have to go to some dinner party and I'm like, unless everybody here is lovey and, I have a, or somebody needs something, I have a harder time kind of threading myself into that. But I go and I do that because I'm like, what if I go there and what if I get to have a conversation with somebody? Or what if I smile at somebody that just needed somebody to smile at them today? I think we start so big with our efforts and think we have to, do these huge things in life to make a difference. But if you could hold the door open for somebody, or if you could just smile and say hi to somebody, that's going to shock people nowadays, and you can say hi and you have no idea what kind of an impact that you could make in somebody's life.
Very true. This day and age, it's sad. If I feel like we're going backwards in a way because we're so closed in and we just don't have that human touch like we used to. And I'm sure a lot of that just comes with, the impacts of social media and this idea that you're going to offend somebody no matter what you do. And I hope that changes over time as we realize that we need that human interaction now more than ever, quite honestly, to help us as a community move forward in a good way. We need each other. We're humans.
We do.
It's part of being human. We need each
People
other.
need people, and there was a
Yeah.
time that I didn't understand that either. Not that I didn't understand it, but I didn't fully engage in it. I didn't believe that I needed people either. I believed that I needed just me. I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. But you cannot do life alone. You need people. It is life can be so lonely. It is lonely. But with people around us, true people, you don't need 10 people around you that are your best of friends. You just need a group that you can go to, that you can be with, to be able to sustain you through so many moments in your life.
Absolutely. You need a good support system, large or small, depending on how you're wired and what moves you forward as an individual. I think that is
100%.
important. People you can trust.
100%.
Yeah,
Yes.
100%. So after, you move forward at this phase, can you talk a little bit more about how you ventured on to having a family and getting into that phase of your life?
Absolutely. So that was the best phase of my life. As I moved forward into my life, I was always the friend. I was never the girlfriend. I wasn't. I was always the friend of the male. It's just how my life went. I didn't really date. There was not, I don't know why, but it just never happened. I'm just not that type of a person. Not that I didn't want to, but that connection never really came big for me. I never had any long-term relationships. And as I moved forward and I was graduated college, I was living in upstate New York, and I decided to move to Florida with a friend, which I never thought in my life. Why would I end up in Florida? I never really cared for it. We came here to Florida after my sister passed away. It was never a place I wanted to come back to. I was not interested in it. I like the hills, I like the lakes, I like this change of seasons, and it was so different. But of course, I ended up coming to Florida with a friend, and probably about 7 years into being in Florida, I'm like, okay, it's time for me to go someplace else. I'm going to go back home. I have to do something different. Florida is just not working for me. And I went out with one of my best friend, and I went out, and we ran into, at the time I catered for the Tampa Bay Rays. I catered their for the team, and so we went out and met. We were at this great Irish bar, and there was a group of 17 people that walked in. I know I didn't know at the time it was 17, but I walked up to the bar just to order a beer for my best friend and I ended up bumping this other person's beer and spilling it. And I was like, oh gosh. So while I was ordering it, I said, oh, can you please replace his? And this guy said to me, he said, where are you from? And I said, well, I live here in Florida. He goes, you're not a Floridian, though. And I said, well, I'm originally from upstate New York. And he goes, yeah. He goes, because Florida girls do not buy guys beer. And I'm like, well, I spilled your beer, so obviously I'm gonna purchase you a new one. And so then the funny thing is, so we chatted a little bit. They had all been to a Rays game, and I gave him my card, and I said, I get some tickets, if you guys want some, I'll get you some tickets. I get a few, and you can have them. And he called me for about 3 months, and I wouldn't go out with him because he was my brother's age. He was younger than me. He didn't live, we lived in different counties. He lived about 45 minutes away from me. So all those things, I was like, why would I go out with this guy anyway? All this is not going to add up in my life. This doesn't make sense. And so he called me one more time, and he said, hey, those 17 friends that you met that night, he said, we're all going to go to a soccer game for July 4th, and we're going to go see a concert, and we're going to go out after. And if you do not like me, they will make sure that you get home. And that same guy, that Mark Wandall, became the love of my life. And so we just had a great relationship. It took a lot. We both had one previous relationship, so we had a lot to learn, but we took time to learn about each other. We had fun with one another. We became each other's best friends. When we'd go our separate ways, and we'd have a great time, but we couldn't wait to get back together with each other again. The distance didn't keep us apart from where we lived. We made it work. And probably 3.5 years into our relationship, Mark asked me to marry him, and it was incredible. We got married a year later in upstate New York, and life was really good. We were really happy. We both gave back. My husband was a financial advisor. I was doing hotel work, and we gave back. We did things. We were great as a couple. We were great on our own, and we were really looking forward to life. And we got married in 2002. And in 2003, we moved into our brand new home. We found out we were pregnant with our daughter, who was going to be born in November. And we're really excited about our life, and really, moving through life. We talked about, oh, I can't wait till we can retire someday. Colorado would be great. We're going to work hard and do everything that we could. And we were excited. My husband was over the moon excited about having our baby. Now, we didn't know at the time we were having a girl. We wanted it to be a surprise, but he was like, no, Melissa, I know we're having a girl. And he'd always wanted a Madison. And so I said, please, if we have a girl, can we name her Madison? And I said, all right. I mean, this was the guy, the sporty guy, the incredible GQ guy, the guy that, played football on the weekends, but worked hard during the week. But all he could think about was the fact that in high school, he wanted to have a little girl named Madison someday. So I said, okay. And then I picked the middle name, Grace, for the grace of God. And so my brother, my younger brother, actually ended up moving in with us for a little bit. We had this brand new home. We weren't sure. He and my brother and my husband were really good friends, and which was fantastic. They were the same age, and they had such a great time together. So my brother moved in with us just for a little bit to see if he wanted to stay in Florida, what the job market was like. And on October 24th of 2003, we were 9 months pregnant that day. And we had made a decision that morning that we were going to go to dinner. The three of us would go out to dinner. And then, so we got home from work, and I didn't feel good at all. I really felt pretty bad, pretty poorly from the pregnancy. And I told my husband, I said, you know what, why don't you and Phil go out to get a quick bite to eat? And when you're home, we'll hang out. And he said, but Melissa, I love you and I'm going to miss you. And I said, well, I love you too, silly, but you are going to be home in just a couple of hours. And we have the rest of our life to spend together. And they went out to dinner, and on their way home, my brother was the driver and my husband was the passenger, and they were stopped at a red light, and the left arrow turned green for my brother to proceed through the intersection. And when he did, a motorist traveling anywhere from 48 to 51 miles an hour ran the light, and unfortunately instantly killed my husband, took his life, and left my brother severely debilitated, emotionally and physically, more emotionally than anything. And when I got the phone call that I needed to be at the intersection, I just remember just the lights and sirens everywhere, and the world just stopped. But the calmness that I had in my soul was surreal. Even for me, thinking about it right now was so surreal, but I knew I needed to protect this baby that was going to be born any day. And through the course of that night, the EMTs allowed me to go say goodbye to my husband. And when I did, I thanked him, number one, for our life. I thanked him for the best 5 years of my life. And I promised him that I would take care of our family, and that our baby would be a happy baby, and that she would be born into love and light and not tragedy and negativity. And I would not let her be marked by that crash that night. And that I would let her know who he was in this life. And I made him a promise, even though I had no idea what had happened at that moment, that I would make a reason for what happened that night at that intersection in an optimistic way. And 2 weeks later, our little girl, Madison, was born. And when I held her in my arms, I made her that same promise, that I would not be a broken mommy, and that I would find a way to move us through this grief, in order for us to have that happy, healthy, and optimistic life. And so it like that October 24th of 2003, and then November 13th of 2003, when our daughter was born, it was so bittersweet, so beautiful. But the fact that my husband and my daughter physically didn't get to meet, that I didn't get to see the love between the two of them, is probably one of the hardest things that I don't hold on to. Right? I hold on to the optimism, to the love that I was given, to the love that we shared, and to the love that we had in this beautiful girl of ours, who is now just turned 21, just a week ago. So, so life, wow, just when you're, those beautiful moments that you lead up to and you have and you're so excited for, That moment, that night, October 24th in 2003, I still remember the promise that I made to my sister that no matter what happened in my life, that I would make sure that I would move through it. I would not get lost into it. I would embrace it and I would do the best that I could with God's help to move in a positive, optimistic direction.
And again, I'm sorry for not just your first loss, you had a second loss, an incredibly tragic loss. And on top of that, your brother also was injured. And so I am again so sorry for all the things that you have been through.
Yes.
Your strength is really awe-inspiring. I don't know how you do it. And I think that that is one reason I'm so glad people will be able to listen to these stories, because your positive energy and like you said, maybe that's your calling, maybe that's your purpose, because I don't know many people that would move through those events with that attitude, especially the very night that it happened. You made this promise to your husband, and then 2 weeks, right? It was 2 weeks later,
Yes. Yeah.
you made the same promise to your
Hmm.
daughter, and you're having a baby without, it's amazing
Yeah.
what you've been through and the strength you've been able to move through your life with, and the fact that you've credited that in part to prior tragedy is very, very interesting. You have a very unique mindset that is a blessing.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's the power, and that optimism that I talk about. I don't think that we can be positive every day and optimistic, and that's why I smile at people every day. It's number one, it's authentic, but optimism truly is the unshakable belief in our ability to create change, even in our most challenging moments, and that's really truly what that optimism is about and how it carries you forward in your life if you truly embrace what optimism is, right? We're all going to have hard
Mhm.
days. I didn't expect to cry on this podcast. It's been
Yeah.
21 years, but at the same time, it lives in your soul. You keep pieces of people that have been in your life, and they've gone on before you, and they're no longer here. You keep those pieces embedded deep inside of you, and you do with grief as well. You just manage it the best that you can every day with what you've got, knowing, for me, my faith helps me through that over and over and over again. Just when I think that, what, I don't know financially if I'm going to be able to keep doing this for this long on my own dime, there always comes a break. There's always a way, and that's where my faith comes in.
Which is great. And when you have those bad days, because everyone has them, even you, who seems like
Yeah.
an extremely positive, optimistic person. Are there any other things that you, outside of your faith, are there other techniques or other things that you try to do to get you back to that place of optimism?
Well, I think also reaching out to other people. So when this crash occurred, I knew that I needed to do something to move through it. You know what? I probably, this is the one piece of advice I'd give. Something happens in somebody's life, pretty tragic. I didn't think it as tragedy for me. I felt it as tragedy for my husband, my brother, my daughter, his parents, my parents. I didn't think so much about myself. But when something like this happens, you really need to sit in it for a little bit. But instead, for me, I couldn't sit in it. Nurturing my daughter was the first part, and I took her wherever I was, she was. I mean, I didn't go anywhere without her. But I needed to make change. I needed to make change for what had happened. I needed to find a way to prevent red light running from happening. But I also, because that's how my husband was killed, by a red light runner. But also, not only that, but to be able to inspire children in grief, to be able to move through their lives. I know what it was like to be a child in grief. And I also know what it's like to have a daughter that's born into grief. So being able to want to do highway safety, to prevent people from making dangerous decisions so that they don't kill somebody or seriously harm someone or themselves, while simultaneously wanting to work to empower children and help children break the isolation barrier for children, like I experienced, to be able to help them in that happy, healthy, optimistic life on their journey. So I simultaneously, so not only is it my faith, my devotions every morning, but it's knowing that there's people out there that can't speak up, that can't make decisions. There's children that are grieving that need other children, right? Young adults need other young adults, teens need other teens that are going through the same like-minded. So I started work to pass a bill in the state of Florida in my husband's memory, while I simultaneously started a foundation in my husband's memory and in my daughter's honor. So I started two things at once that really helped me to take that grief and move with it in order to impact other people. Because I know how it felt, and I didn't like how I felt in my own shoes. And so I wanted to try to create change on the traffic safety side, while I simultaneously wanted to create the trajectory for children in grief, and at the same time educate children, educate our teachers, and educate adults that we need to communicate with these kids so that they know that they're not alone, so that they can be empowered in their grief, so that they can know that it's okay to laugh, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be angry, as long as you do it where you're not harming yourself or somebody else. And it is okay to feel joy. And that you don't have to be the head of your family, right? That you can, and you don't have to take care of your family, that you can be nurtured. And through nurturing these kids in grief, it empowers them to find their own voice and move through their own grief.
That is great work. And can you tell me, I want to talk about both of the things that you started. Can you tell me what that law did that you had passed?
Absolutely. So it's one of those laws that's very hard to pass, especially here in the state of Florida. But since my husband's life was taken by a red light runner, red light running is preventable. People aren't obeying traffic safety laws. So I didn't want to, my whole point with the female, it was a female, and she was a mom that ran that light, and she got a $500 fine in community service. I didn't want her going to jail. I don't want anybody to go to jail if they don't have to. I want people to learn from their mistakes. Unfortunately, she was habitual with, her last offense was running a red light and being ticketed for it. So I thought, you know what, can we get stronger laws? What does that look like? Well, I found out here in Florida, that's not really going to happen. You're not going to get any stronger laws than 4 points on your license, a $500 fine, and community service, even if you kill someone. So I started researching red light safety cameras around the country, how they work, why they work, what states are they working in, and where do they not? If they're not working in that state, why are they not working? So I started just really asking questions with traffic camera companies. I started talking to the Chamber of Commerce in my area, my representatives, my senators, started bringing people together to bring together a coalition of judges, law enforcement, community leaders, to be able to work to pass a law, to be able to have red light safety cameras at the most dangerous intersections in the state of Florida. Because when you have a bill, like a red light safety camera bill, what it is doing, it's that second layer of protection. So if we are not paying attention, and there are signs up that are saying you are about to enter an intersection where you will be photographed and you will be ticketed, it gives that mindset of that person of, okay, I don't want to be ticketed. I don't want to be ticketed. So they don't think about taking a life. They don't think that they're going to take a life because they think that they're just going to go through this light and everything's going to be okay and they're going to get to where they need to go. But we know that that's not happening. So the bill, I started that in 2005, a little bit 2004, but 2005 really started getting some meat behind it. And it's called the Mark Wandall Traffic Safety Act. And it took 5 years to pass. It took 5 years to pass that bill. And then even after the bill passed on May 13 of 2010. And then for 12, 13 years after, the bill was in repeal every single solitary year. So I'd have to go up all the time. And that time frame of that passing that bill, I did that on my own dime because of life insurance. I did that. I didn't want a company coming through and, and paying me to do this because that's not why I was doing it. I was doing it to prevent this from happening to other people. As few people as possible that their lives could be saved by a red light safety camera. It's not just a red light safety camera. It's red light safety cameras, it's law enforcement, it's education, it's advocacy, it's engineering. It takes a combination to remind people to be safe out on our roadways. And so the Mark Wandall Traffic Safety Act does that. The bill is still intact. It was a very long, tedious process. And when I tell you that you really have to make sure that as an advocate that you know what you're talking about, but you also have to make sure that it wasn't just about my passion and my heart and my love. It was also, I had to have critical knowledge of what that bill was, and how to advocate. Because if I didn't, the media and lawmakers would have tore me apart. Really, truly, because they were always looking for a negative spin to this story. And really, at the end of the day, when something happens in your life and it's sitting in your lap, and if you have the ability to bring people together in order to pass a bill that actually is going to keep people from dying on our roadways, then I think that that's something that is, that's something, if we can do it, then I think we should.
Absolutely. The process, and I hear this more and more, of getting things done, like actual change, is daunting.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the wherewithal it requires, on top of being knowledgeable, on top of having your personal experience, and obviously a very good reason for that. It it's just daunting in terms of the energy it takes to keep yourself going on a year after year after year basis. And you said it took 5 years?
Yeah, so it took 5 years to pass that bill. Yeah, we'd sit there like, the year before when it didn't pass, it was so close to passing. We were sure in the fourth year it was going to pass. And they kept like, it would be called, they TP the bill, the temporary postpone it. They kept doing it and doing it. And I was up there for 3.5 weeks sitting, waiting for this bill to be heard over and over and over again with my little girl, like staying in a hotel, like 5 hours away, 5 hours away from our home. But I wanted her there with me. So, you sit there over and over and over again, because no matter what you've said, how you've set these these policymakers up, still at the end of the day, if they don't want to pass that bill, or if they've promised one lawmaker, I'm going to help you pass this bill, but in the end, I'm not going to because you didn't help me. It's such a game, and it's really not a game when you're playing with life. Our policymakers are up. Our policymakers are supposed to help us with the challenges we have, in our communities to make them better. And that bill does all of that. I mean, it's just, the fine, it's a $125 fine. Points are an assist on your license. It doesn't go into your insurance company. $10 per ticket goes to 22 level 1 trauma centers in the state of Florida. $3 per ticket goes to the Miami Project to Cure Paralysis. So it's a really good working bill. The only way, and 50% of tickets are thrown out. The only way that you are going to get a ticket is if your front tires go over that white line on red and you are entering an intersection where you could take your own life or that of somebody else or your own family member. So it's not about penalizing people. It's about educating them and about saving their lives. And in those 5 years, people would come back to me and say, aren't you disgusted? Aren't you disappointed? I'm like, no, really, I'm not, because the more we build on it, the more people we're educating along the way. The more policymakers we're educating. And that fifth year, that's when it was a nail biter. But it did pass.
Yeah, that had to feel so good on that
Yes.
day. I can imagine the happiness you felt
Yeah.
after that long
Mhm.
of and the work that goes into it.
Yeah.
So congratulations, because I know it's not an easy feat, and especially in this day and age when we're so used to everything happening, like people are impatient. So
Yes. Yes.
I'm sure that felt really, really good.
Yeah.
And what's crazy, and I just thought about this during this past however many minutes we've been speaking, is my sons and I were at a red light once and we just didn't go right away. And if we had gone right away, we would have been slammed like that. I mean,
Mhm.
it is incredible
Yes.
how your life truly can change in 1 second's time. And we even like stopped and like all looked at each other like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, if we would have taken off when it was green,
Yeah.
you have no clue what would have
Yes.
happened. And so it is important to educate, to have consequences, even if they're just the idea of I'm going to get a ticket, just that mental change for people of, okay, think about it before you do this. It's incredible how it can save lives. And
Yes.
you're pushing for that
Yes.
every day.
Yes.
Now and still today.
Yeah. And
So I commend you for
yeah,
that, because it takes a lot of
yeah,
gumption
and
and
not only for the victim, but for the violator, because the violators, most of them are unintentional. Yes, are there people out there making some really dumb decisions every day? Absolutely. But people unintentionally are killing other people. And they have to live with that for the rest of their lives as well. And we have to be very mindful and very careful to remember when we are on our roadways, whether we are in a vehicle, we're a bicyclist, we're a motorcyclist, or we're a pedestrian, we have to remember that we have to take care of each other out there. It's a shared responsibility on our roadways. It's not just one person. We all need to make sure that we get home at the end of the night, because we deserve that. Our family deserves to have us intact at the end of the night, not taken in a moment, by somebody just deciding not to obey a traffic safety laws. Those laws are for our good. They're not to harm us, they're to help us. And that's what we have to remember. And just like you said in a second, just if everybody would take a second and just don't need to take a second, just blink. That's how your life changes. You just blink. And
Mhm.
it's different,
Yeah.
and that's what happens out on our roadways.
Can you tell me, over time, since you've been doing this for so many
Mhm.
years, are the are violators getting worse? Are things getting better? And maybe you can just speak about Florida. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
what are you seeing as statistics or anything like that that you can share?
Yeah, so we still are we're an open mess. We were getting to a point where our numbers were coming down in Florida and around the country, and then COVID hit. And then there wasn't as many people on the roads, but the people, and this is all over the country, right? All over the country, because there were not as many people on the roads, speed became an issue, like became a hotter thing than it ever has before. And so with that speed, that has become that number one epidemic, which if you run a red light, you're speeding, right? So you're cutting in and out of traffic, you're speeding. So we are working so hard around this country. I work with great organizations like Governor's Highway Safety Association, Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. We have all of these great organizations, Safe Kids Worldwide, the National Coalition for Safer Roads that I'm the president of. We all come together to this is what we do day in and day out, is we work on campaigns and we work on programs. The Florida Department of Transportation, we all work on programs to try to keep people safe at the end of the day and remind people to make really good decisions so that we can get those numbers down. Because until we come to the end, it's not about putting all these vehicles out there that can drive for you. We are human. We are human beings, and we need to be responsible for what we do every day. And driving is a privilege. It is not a right. And we need to make sure that we're taking care of people out there. So we struggle with the numbers all over this country. They bounce all over the place. And it's because people that don't recognize that what they're doing out there is going to end up causing them more grief than being late for work, right? Or late to a baseball game, or whatever reason they have for speeding.
Right. One additional question on this topic, and then I'd like to explore more about what you're doing for children. With regard to education or getting into maybe the school systems, does Florida require like a driver's ed course for students, or is that optional?
It's optional, and that's what's harsh. When I was up in passing this bill, they took driver's ed out of the schools. And so it's really, there's quite a few of us that are trying to eventually not eventually, we want to get driver's ed back in the school system. Because most of these kids now are being taught by their parents. And these kids have all sat in the back seat of their car as little toddlers and watched how their parents drive. And whether they have a cell phone in front of them or they're speeding, the parents always survived, right? They've always gotten where they needed to go from point A to point B. Those kids already know how they can drive and what they can get away with. So we really shouldn't have, I didn't think I was equipped to teach my daughter to drive. Definitely not equipped. Yes, she could drive with me and I could give her the basic lessons, but we need driver's ed back in our school systems. It should, and also kids in Florida at 15 can get, they can get their, what am I trying to say?
The permit?
They can get their permit. Yeah. Yeah, they can get their permit.
Yeah.
15 years old. They can't even pick up their room. And you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Let alone handle a vehicle. Yeah, that's not a good thing. And they can go online and take the test. And look.
Oh, really? For the license or you mean the permit?
For the permit. And they can get their permit.
Yeah.
And you can cheat, So yes. So we have a long.
So Missouri sounds very similar to that, and I personally think it should be in all schools. Just that way, like you were saying, you get the good habits from the get-go. You're not inheriting the habits of the person that you're learning from, because we all know it's probably not the best.
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't follow the rules. Certainly not the rules that you get tested on, because I feel like when you go to take that test, it's so different than the normal everyday habits, and that's a bad thing because we're anyway.
Yeah. Our children are so observant. I remember I always have my coffee in my car, and I went to take a drink of my coffee, and my daughter was like, "Mama, no, you're not allowed to drink and drive. That's so dangerous." And I'm like, well, this is a cup of coffee, but okay, it's funny, the different mind. And it's not funny drinking and driving, but it was funny from the perspective of what she picked up, because I do highway safety.
Sure. Right. So she's going to be extra aware of what's going on around her, and rightly so. Now, as I mentioned, I'd like to talk a little bit more about what your program is all about for the children, because I think that is something that I know our listeners have been missing. We talk a lot about spouses and parents, but I want to learn a little bit more about what you're doing for the kids.
Absolutely. So I have a foundation. It's called the Mark Wandall Foundation. And the Mark Wandall Foundation, our mission is to empower and connect children, teens, and young adults who've had a parent, sibling, or guardian die. And we do that through programming. We do that so that we can break that isolation barrier and meet the kids right where they're at. The programming consists of a camp. We are, Comfort Zone Camp is the #1 grief camp in the country. We've partnered with them. This will be our 10th year. We have that camp once a year at the end of April. And we have about 60, we started out only taking 50 kids because that's all we could really afford. My foundation is very small. I am a very small nonprofit. I do not take income from my foundation. We have not been able to solicit any big grants whatsoever because unless you're a $200,000 foundation, or even $150,000 foundation, which we don't stay at that because our camp cost about $75,000 a year. So the money comes in and it goes back out towards our programming. And so what happens with that is we can't get any of the big grants. And we've got the kids. We actually have more kids that need our services than we can afford to bring in, like at our big camp. So our big camp, we now take 62 kids, right? So I've gone 12 extra. Well, we need a second camp because one of the things that I always said is no child should ever grieve alone, right? We don't want that. I mean, there's going to be kids that you're not going to be able to find. And we take kids of all, of every single kid. There's no child that is grieving that is not supported in my foundation. And so I think that, we take these 62 kids and guess what? Each year we leave 15 to 20 kids on a wait list because the program is phenomenal because not only you have the opportunity to be in healing circles where these kids get the opportunity to be within their age group and they're with a volunteer therapist that does these healing circles where the kids can be able to talk about their loss and talk about their feelings. And the great thing is for those kids that don't want to do that, do not want to put themselves out there, they're still listening and they're still understanding that the emotions that they are feeling are there's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing, those feelings that they feel, somebody's going to say it. And so the connection in those healing circle groups are incredible. They have outward bound activities. So they're climbing the rock walls. They're doing all kinds of rope courses because they learned how to bond. They learn how to work together in their grief. We talked earlier that the kids, the people need to know that they are connected and that we need people need people. Well, these kids need kids that are like-minded, that has experienced their loss type. That's why we do sibling, guardian, or parent to keep that loss similar. And so some kids, if they want to talk about it, they know they can talk about it. But if they don't want to talk about it, they don't have to either. So that's our biggest. Our biggest is the camp. So that's our biggest funding piece. But it's also one of the greatest things that we do, and it's for all kids in the state of Florida. Then we do equine assisted learning. Right now, we do that 6 months out of the year. The summers are way too hot here in Florida, but the kids love it. They get on the horses, they get to lead the horses, they get to groom the horses. Again, we don't go to, at the camp, it's more everybody kids, they call it grief camp. But the equine assisted learning, they know that everyone there has had some type of a parent or sibling loss, but they're there in the outdoors and it's so beautiful. They get to be in an environment where they get to lead the horses. So they get to truly, even without coming out and saying this is synonymous to grief, they're learning those coping mechanisms that will help them on that journey of that happy, healthy, optimistic life. It helps them to grow and it helps them to nurture themselves in their grief. And it just gives them some really good bites that'll help them later on throughout their journey. And then we also do college and trade school scholarships, and that's very small. The last 5 years that we've been doing it, we do not have a big bucket of money. Right now, we only have $7,000 each year. We usually have 10, so we're going to try to get there. And again, that's a college or trade school. We have so many kids that are looking for these scholarships that for trade school and for college that we have been essentially giving 5 $2,000 scholarships to these families. And then the most important, I believe, and what I love is we have quarterly reconnects. So those reconnects are, for an example, this summer we had a baseball game. We had a baseball game. I got to throw out the first pitch. We had over 70 members of the families in grief that were out there. They were cheering me on. They were having fun. We had food beforehand. It gives them time for the parent or the guardian or the grandparent to meet one another. It gives the kids the opportunity to connect, and it gives me the opportunity to really look at these kids in the eye, look at these families, see where we can resource them in other ways. Are they food insecure? Can I help them over here? Are they struggling in school? How can we be of service to them? And then on December 6th, we have one of our board members. They own two restaurant, Station 400, here in Florida, and we're going to have a pancake dinner with all of our families, because the holidays are coming. And so we really want to be able to help them with that as well. So the foundation is set up to be able to empower these kids to walk through their grief, to know that they're not alone, and to give them coping mechanisms that will help them move through their life. But it also gives them the opportunity to say, hey, I need some help. I had a teacher at school, and that it bothered me the way that they treated me. They didn't take my grief serious. Or I have friends at school that won't speak to me because they don't know how to speak to me. They don't know what to say to me, so they don't talk to me at all. Now we've given them friends, right, to break that isolation barrier so that they're not alone, so that they don't want to do a lot of self-harming, so that they don't want to take their anger and go utilize it in such a destructive way. We want to help as many kids as possible, and it is free to all families. No one in our foundation, no family is ever going to have to pay for any of our services. That's why we do the best we can, as small as we are, to fundraise. It's so important. We need funding for that second camp so that we can continue to serve more kids than we're serving now, because we've got the kids. We just don't have the funding.
Yeah. Now, first of all, you have a huge heart. It's amazing what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. And I love a couple things. One, I love that you have scholarships for both college and trade schools, because I think that one of our children is interested in more probably in the trades. And I feel like sometimes they get, pushed aside or what have you.
Yep.
So that's number one. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Pursuing their dreams is how I look at that,
Yes.
no matter what the format.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have, you're covering all of those expenses for these kids. Have you considered any kind of private pay or anything like that, or you don't? Is that part of an option for the program, where if someone had kids that they wanted to have go through the program, or is it all just you just assume that you're covering it all?
No,
Or
we
how does that
cover
work?
it all. We're a 501c3, and I have a grandparent in the foundation who we've been her granddaughter has been a part of our program for 6 or 7 years now. She's always like, we have a golf tournament. She sponsors. She gives money at the end of the year. We have a couple of
Sure.
parents that have now become our board members. So they're just utilized in different ways. But we don't ever push that, because really, honestly, they have so many other things to think about. We don't want them to have to think about. We want them to be free to come into our program and not feel bad if they have to give money. And there's a lot of organizations out there that there's a lot of funding that we could get, but that we can't get. And that truly is a shame. That you
Yeah.
hurt small foundations like mine, but you're not going to hurt us. I mean, we're going to continue to help our kids regardless. But
Sure.
boy, we would be able to have that second camp here in Florida, which would really, truly, help these kids on a continual
Absolutely.
basis.
Absolutely. And you said it's just right now, it's just for residents of the state of Florida.
Yes.
That's how you kind of
My
manage
foundation
the
is for
group.
the residents of the state of Florida. But our program with Comfort Zone, they work all over the country. Yeah, they're all over the country. They can go
Okay.
to a camp. It wouldn't be sponsored by us, but they'd be sponsored by somebody else. They're a great
Gotcha.
partner.
Makes sense. Yeah, we'll have to look that up and share that with the listeners. Some of those resources that you mentioned, like that one.
They're
I think
all
it would
on
be
my page.
great to
Yeah,
know.
they're all on my resource
Okay,
page.
perfect.
Yes. The checking
Perfect. We
station.
will direct everyone there.
Yes.
Fantastic. So, where are you right now personally in your healing journey with all the things that you've been through and all the things you do? I mean, this is your life every single day. Where how would you say, how would you compare who you were even as far back as growing up to who you are today?
Yeah, I'm totally I'm still that little Missy inside that has taken every life lesson that I've been given and tried to work through that. But it is a where I am now, it's hard to believe it's been 21 years. I feel like I'm feeling for the first time now, and I'm now recognizing that I always knew my husband was never going to come back. But I am now recognizing that this is my life that I've created and I've caved out, right? And I'm so happy, and that makes me wonderful. I love traffic safety campaigns. I love speaking. I want to do more motivational speaking. It's really my passion. How do I get there? When am I going to do it? Because I've got, this traffic safety over here, and I've got this foundation over here. So really, truly moving into that space of that motivational speaking is where where I want to be and where I could come to some use. But I want people to recognize, and this really truly, I don't like it sometimes when people are like, oh, first heard on this show, but truly first heard. It is lonely. It is hard. My daughter is in school now. She's away from me. She no longer lives at home. She's going to visit for the holidays, and I cannot wait to see her. But you get in your head by yourself when you all of these things are great, and I don't ever think I did all of it alone. There's no way. I had people that came around that really helped me with these missions, that help me today with these missions. I have incredible colleagues that continue to inspire me and support me to keep going strong. Sometimes when I go, is my story getting old? Because I don't work to tell my story. I work to thread it in so that other people know that no matter what happens in their life, that they can make it, that they can stand up. And it's not about somebody doing all these big things, starting this foundation, passing a life-saving bill. It's not about any of that. It's about the healing that takes place within yourself. And for me, life for me is always a marathon and not a sprint. I build things small and I build things slowly because I want them to last. I want them to be a part of my life. Yes, this foundation and the traffic safety is in my husband's memory, right? And it's in my daughter's honor, but it is my legacy. It is my hope for tomorrow that when I'm gone, that this will continue, that this momentum will continue with somebody. It doesn't have to be my daughter, but that people will see, the advocates will come along and know that their voice matters. The kids in grief will understand that, you know what, I may be going through all this, but I can reach out, I can ask for help, I can get that. So this whole thing of my life being, a marathon and not a sprint, I'm just starting to heal myself. I'm starting to, my beautiful husband, my home, my little family that I was so excited about, there is no retirement. There is no, happily ever after has become a whole other thing, and I'm by myself. I don't have somebody. Sometimes you want to turn and go, hey, what do you think? Do you think this is right? Am I doing the right thing? Or can we help our daughter with this? I don't have that. And I'm not sitting back and crying and all upset about that, right? But it's the truth. And it's the rawness of your life when I look back and I see everything that's been done. And then like today, I thought, when you think, is my time, has my best time come? And then I sit and I'm listening to a podcast today, and I just happened to turn on my radio in my car, and it was a podcast that said, if you think that your best life has already been, you better think again, the best is yet to come. And so, again,
Hmm.
getting back to my faith, when I think
Right.
that sometimes I question, not always, but I'm human, and I question where I'm
Yeah.
at now. And should I be farther? Should I do this or should I do that? We have to stop and just remember that, we all have so much to give in life. And we all have so many things we want to do, and not sure what the future looks like, not sure where I'm going to be next or where's that paycheck going to come from, are people going to continue to want to work with me? Is a real, is a real thing. But at the end of the day, there are people that whose lives have been saved that I'll never know through the Mark Wandell Traffic Safety
Yeah.
Act. And there's kids that now know that they're not alone, that they have friends to walk this journey with in this life, and that they are not alone, and that they are going to be okay. And at the end of the day, that brings peace to me, like, like none other. It really does.
Definitely a higher purpose
Mhm.
that you've come to appreciate, enjoy, and find happiness in. So that's absolutely commendable. And I'm just going to ask you one more question, then we'll wrap it up pretty soon. But have you ever thought about, being a lobbyist or running for a government position because you're so passionate and you're so big about driving change?
Yes, thank you. No. Yeah, not at all. It's not, I don't even want to be in that realm. And it's funny, I've
Yeah.
been asked a few times, and it's not for me. I'm better off being on this side of it, where I can use my voice freely. Once you get pinned into that government, you have a responsibility that you can't fulfill. It's impossible, because if you want to pass a bill, then you need to make sure that you are helping other people with things you might not be as strong on or believe in. I think you have to be able to play that balancing game. And for me
Hmm.
personally, I'm a hearts and flower girl. I'm always going to be that.
Yeah.
I'm fierce and I'm loyal. And if I tell somebody I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And getting into that political realm, I would never be able to look at somebody and say, I guarantee you, I'm going to put my stamp on it and this is going to get done. So,
Interesting. You're now the second person I've heard that from. So it's a sad state of affairs when that's unfortunately the world we live in, but it's reality, and I understand that.
and there's a
And I
lot of,
understand your
yeah.
viewpoint.
And there's a lot of good people in politics. There really is. I'm not saying
Sure.
that there's not at all.
Sure.
Your voice is not your voice.
Very much under the influence and pressure of others. So
Mhm.
absolutely makes sense. I want to thank you for your time today and your stories. I mean, you have quite a life history, and like you said, life isn't over. You still have a lot of life to live and a lot of things to do and figure out what you want to be when you grow up, as they always say. And it sounds like you're open and honest
Yeah.
with yourself that it might pivot, and you might be happy if it does pivot.
Hmm.
But if it stays exactly where it is, you've done some tremendous things for people you'll never meet. And those that you have had the privilege of meeting through what you're doing for kids, which is hugely impactful at a young age because they'll go on to be adults and they have to deal with trauma and grief, and you're teaching them that they're not alone. And I thank you for that because that creates a better community for everyone.
Thank you.
When people can address their issues and know that they're not alone. So thank you, and thank you for everything that you provided for listeners. You share a lot of hope and a path to healing, even if you are like the Energizer Bunny. I that'd be hard to match,
Yeah.
honestly.
No, yeah. And it's true. And you have to find fun through it all, and you have to find that joy. And my hope is that, my daughter really truly, when you sit back and you look, and I mean, you have children, so you think about
Mhm.
decisions that you've made, and at the end of the day, it's just been she and I. I'm the good, the bad, and the ugly as a parent. And at the end of the day, my hope is she'll never tell me, but I hope that there's some good takeaways for her as well, because she is incredible and her dad would be so incredibly proud of her, as I am. I'm so proud of her, and she's gone through life and she's had so many bumps and bruises. But I'm so grateful that, that he left me with such a beautiful token of love. And I hope to have the opportunity to really, get to know her as an adult, is really what I'm
Mhm.
doing right now. And I just love it so much.
And it's official. She just turned 21. So
Yes.
she is, well, it's official at 18.
Yeah.
Sorry. I
Well,
think of
no,
21
I
as
don't,
being
I
the
don't know,
full.
but is it?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's not, but
Yeah.
it is a blessing that you have a piece of your husband with you in a living body and a child
Yes.
to love and learn and grow with throughout both of your lives. So that is a wonderful attitude, and getting to know them, children as adults, is definitely a different animal, and it's something that you see your own wisdom in, and you see them making their own decisions, and you obviously just want the best for them. So wish you luck with that
Thank
as
you.
well. So.
Thank you. Thank you
Yep.
for
Well,
all you
thanks for
do.
your time. And we will share with everyone the resources you mentioned. We'll refer to your websites and provide those links. And I think that's about it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you and all you
Mhm.
all do for so many people. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure thing. You've been listening to Life Beyond Loss, a podcast from Survival in the Trenches. If you'd like to get involved and help those struggling to cope with personal loss, visit us at our website, survivalitt.com, and follow us on social media. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast so we can continue to grow and reach more people in need. Together, we can make a difference.